The alarm screams at you through the darkness. 4:59 becomes 5 o'clock, and in that split second, you face the first battle of your day. Not with the world, not with your boss, not with traffic or deadlines or other people's expectations. You face yourself. And in that moment, lying there in the warmth of your bed, you make a decision that will echo through every hour that follows. You either rise and claim the day, or you surrender to the comfort that keeps most people ordinary. This is the 5 a.m. war. And it's not about waking up early. It's about who you become when no one is watching, when the world is still asleep, when there are no witnesses to your choices except the voice in your head that either builds you or breaks you. Because here's what they don't tell you about 5 a.m. It's not just a time, it's a test, a daily examination of whether you're the kind of person who does what they say they'll do, or the kind who negotiates with their own promises until they mean nothing. Most people think early rising is about productivity. Get more done, check more boxes, optimize your morning routine. But that's surface level thinking. The real war happens in the space between your alarm and your feet hitting the floor. In those seconds, you're not just deciding whether to get up. You're deciding who you are. Because the person who can command their body to move when their mind wants to stay still, that person has access to a kind of power most people never discover. You see, 5 a.m. doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't negotiate with your comfort. It doesn't wait for you to feel ready or motivated or inspired. 5 a.m. simply is. And your response to that indifference reveals everything about your character. The weak negotiate. The strong simply rise. Not because they feel like it, but because they decided to. And that decision, made in darkness and silence, becomes the foundation for every other choice they make. Here's what happens when you lose the 5 a.m. war. You don't just sleep in. You teach yourself that your word means nothing, that your commitments are suggestions. That comfort is more valuable than character. And once you've learned that lesson, it spreads like poison through every area of your life. You'll negotiate with your diet, your workout, your deadlines, your relationships. Because if you can't trust yourself to get out of bed, why would you trust yourself with anything else? But when you win that first battle, something shifts. Not just in your schedule, but in your identity. You become someone who does hard things when they're hard. Someone who keeps promises, especially the ones you make to yourself. Someone who understands that discipline isn't about feeling motivated. It's about moving anyway. And that kind of person, they don't just wake up early. They wake up dangerous. The 5 a.m. crowd, they're not normal people who happen to get up early. They're a different breed entirely. They've discovered something the rest of the world sleeps through, that the hours before the world wakes up belong to those bold enough to claim them. Those hours are pure, undiluted by other people's energy, expectations, or emergencies. In that silence, you don't just find time, you find yourself. Think about it. When everyone else is unconscious, when the phone isn't ringing, when the emails haven't started flooding in, when the world hasn't begun making demands on your attention, what remains? Just you and your thoughts and your choices. No excuses, no distractions, no one to blame. Just the raw truth of whether you're willing to do what you said you'd do when saying it was easy. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think 5 a.m. is about sacrifice, giving up sleep, giving up comfort, giving up the luxury of rolling over and hitting snooze. They see it as punishment, as some kind of masochistic ritual that successful people force themselves through. They miss the point entirely. 5 a.m. isn't about giving up anything. It's about gaining everything. Because in those quiet hours, while the world sleeps, you're not just awake. You're alive in a way that most people never experience. The darkness becomes your ally, not your enemy. The silence becomes your sanctuary, not your prison. The solitude becomes your strength, not your weakness. Because when you're the only one awake in your world, you're not competing with anyone else's energy. You're not adapting to anyone else's rhythm. You're not conforming to anyone else's expectations. You're operating on pure will, undiluted intention, raw discipline, and that's when you discover something profound. You don't need the world's permission to be great. You don't need perfect conditions to take action. You don't need to feel ready to start moving. All you need is the willingness to honor the commitment you made to yourself in a moment of clarity. Because that's what 5 a.m. really is. A daily opportunity to prove that your word means something, that your promises have weight, that your character is stronger than your comfort. Most people live their entire lives reacting, responding to alarms, to emails, to other people's priorities, to whatever crisis or opportunity or distraction comes their way. They wake up and immediately check their phones, letting the world tell them what to think about, what to worry about, what to focus on. They start their day in response mode, and they never break free from it. But the 5 a.m. warrior, they live differently. They wake up and create. They don't check their phone. They check their intention. They don't react to the world. They act on their vision. They don't wait for life to happen to them. They make life happen through them. Because in those early hours, before the world starts making demands, they've already decided who they're going to be that day. This is about more than time management, or morning routines, or productivity hacks. This is about identity warfare. Every morning at 5 a.m., you're fighting for the right to define yourself. You're battling for the privilege of living intentionally instead of accidentally. You're warring against the part of you that would rather stay comfortable than become powerful. And make no mistake, this is a war. Your bed is the enemy's strongest fortress. Your pillow is their weapon of choice. Your warm blankets are the chains they use to keep you imprisoned. And every morning, you have to choose whether you'll break free or surrender to another day of mediocrity disguised as comfort. The snooze button isn't just a delay tactic. It's a declaration of defeat. Every time you hit it, you're saying that 9 more minutes of unconsciousness is worth more than the respect you have for your own word. You're trading your integrity for temporary comfort. You're choosing to be someone who breaks promises, starting with the ones you make to yourself. But when you rise at 5 a.m., you're making a different declaration. You're saying that your commitment matters more than your comfort, that your character is stronger than your circumstances, that you're the kind of person who does what they say they'll do, especially when it's hard, especially when no one is watching, especially when every fiber of your being is screaming at you to quit. This is where legends are born. Not in the spotlight, not in the applause, not in the moments when the world is watching. Legends are forged in the darkness, in the silence, in the solitude of 5 a.m., when the only witness to your choice is the voice in your head that either builds you up or tears you down. The voice that tears you down is seductive. It whispers reasonable things. Just 5 more minutes. You worked hard yesterday. You deserve rest. The world won't end if you sleep until 6. These aren't lies, technically, but they're not truths either. They're negotiations with mediocrity, dressed up as self-compassion. And the moment you listen, the moment you engage with that voice, as if it has equal weight to your committed word, you've already lost. Because here's what that voice doesn't tell you. Every time you surrender to it, it grows stronger. Every time you choose comfort over commitment, that voice becomes more convincing, more persistent, more dominant in your decision-making process. Until eventually, it's not just whispering about sleep. It's negotiating with your diet, your exercise, your work ethic, your relationships, your dreams. It becomes the default setting of your mind, the path of least resistance that leads nowhere worth going. But the voice that builds you up, that voice operates differently. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't explain. It doesn't offer comfortable alternatives. It simply states facts. You said 5 a.m. It's 5 a.m. Move. That voice grows stronger too, but only through action. Every time you honor it, every time you choose its guidance over the seductive whispers of comfort, it becomes more authoritative, more trustworthy, more powerful in shaping who you become. This is the real battleground. Not your bedroom, but your mind. Not your schedule, but your identity. Not your morning routine, but your relationship with your own word. And the winner of this battle isn't determined by how you feel, or what you want, or what seems reasonable in the moment. It's determined by what you do when feeling and wanting and reasoning all point towards staying exactly where you are. The 5 a.m. warrior. Understand something crucial about human nature. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And the most important system you'll ever build isn't your workout routine or your meal prep or your productivity methods. It's your relationship with discipline itself. Because discipline isn't a tool you use when you feel like it. It's a muscle you build by using it when you don't. Every morning at 5 a.m., you're either strengthening that muscle or letting it atrophy. There's no neutral ground, no maintaining the status quo. You're either becoming more disciplined or less disciplined, more reliable or less reliable, more trustworthy to yourself or less trustworthy. And these incremental changes, invisible in the moment, compound into dramatic differences in who you become over time. The person who rises at 5 a.m. for a week isn't just someone who got up early 7 times. They're someone who proved to themselves that their commitment matters more than their comfort. The person who does it for a month isn't just maintaining a schedule. They're rewiring their identity around reliability, around keeping their word, around doing hard things when they're hard. And here's where the magic happens. That identity shift doesn't stay contained to your morning routine. It bleeds into everything else. The person who can command their body to rise when their mind wants to rest, that person approaches challenges differently. They don't negotiate with difficulty. They don't wait for motivation to strike. They don't need perfect conditions to take action. They simply do what they said they'd do when they said they'd do it, because they've proven to themselves that their word has weight. This is why successful people aren't successful, because they wake up early. They wake up early because they're the kind of people who do what they say they'll do. The early rising isn't the cause of their success. It's the symptom of their character, a daily demonstration of the discipline that shows up in every other area of their lives. But let's talk about what really happens in those early hours. Because it's not just about the time you gain, though that's significant. It's about the person you become in that time. When the world is silent and still, when there are no external pressures or expectations or distractions, you meet yourself without pretense. No performance for others, no adaptation to circumstances, no reaction to external stimuli. Just you and your thoughts and your choices. In that space, you discover things about yourself that daylight hours never reveal. You learn how you think when no one else is thinking with you. You discover what you really want when there's no one to impress. You find out what you're capable of when there's no one to blame for your limitations. And perhaps most importantly, you realize that you don't need external motivation to take action. You can generate momentum from nothing but will. This is the secret power of the 5 a.m. hour. It's not productivity time. It's identity time. Time when you're not playing any role except the one you choose. Not the employee, the parent, the spouse, the friend. Just the person who decided that their word matters enough to honor it in the darkness when no one else is watching. And in that identity space, you start to understand something profound about human potential. You're not limited by your circumstances, your past, your resources, or your natural talents. You're limited by your willingness to honor the commitments you make to yourself. Because everything else, every external success, every achievement, every breakthrough flows from that foundation. the foundation of being someone who can be trusted, especially by yourself. The 5 a.m. war isn't won once. It's fought every single day, and the battles never get easier. Your bed doesn't become less comfortable. Your pillow doesn't lose its appeal. The darkness doesn't become less inviting. If anything, the war intensifies because the stakes get higher. The more you build, the more you have to protect. The stronger you become, the more your old self fights to reclaim control. But here's what changes. Your response to the battle. The person who's won this war for months or years doesn't wake up wanting to get up any more than they did on day one, but they've learned something invaluable about the relationship between feeling and action. They've discovered that you don't have to feel like doing something to do it well. That motivation is nice when it shows up, but discipline is what you can count on when it doesn't. This realization becomes your superpower in a world where everyone else is waiting to feel ready. While they're hoping for inspiration to strike, for circumstances to align, for the perfect moment to arrive, you're already moving. Not because you feel like it, but because you've trained yourself to act independent of feeling. And that training, that daily practice of separating action from emotion, transforms how you approach every challenge in your life. The boardroom presentation you're dreading? You don't wait to feel confident. You prepare and deliver because that's what disciplined people do. The difficult conversation you've been avoiding? You don't wait for courage to arrive. You have it because you've practiced hard things when they felt impossible. The business you want to start, the relationship you want to repair, the habit you want to build. You don't wait for the right mood or the perfect timing. You begin because you've proven to yourself that beginning is what matters most. But here's where most people misunderstand the 5 a.m. commitment. They think it's about perfection, about never missing a day, about becoming some kind of machine that operates without human weakness. That's not the point. The point is learning how to win the battle more often than you lose it, learning how to get back up after you fall, learning that one failure doesn't erase all your victories. Because you will fail. There will be mornings when the alarm goes off and you don't move, when exhaustion wins, when life circumstances overwhelm your discipline, when you simply choose comfort over commitment. And in those moments, the real test begins. Not the test of getting up, but the test of getting back up. Not the test of never falling, but the test of never staying down. The amateur lets one missed morning become a week of sleeping in. The professional treats failure as information, not identity. They analyze what went wrong, adjust their approach, and return to the battle the next day. Because they understand that discipline isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about showing up again and again, especially after you've shown up poorly. This is what separates those who use the 5 a.m. hour to transform their lives from those who try it for a few weeks and quit. The transformers don't quit because they never fail. They transform because they fail and continue anyway. They miss mornings and get up earlier the next day. They break their streak and start a new one immediately. They treat setbacks as setup for comebacks, and gradually, through this process of falling and rising, of failing and returning, something remarkable happens. The battle becomes less about forcing yourself out of bed and more about honoring who you've decided to become. You're not fighting your natural tendencies anymore. You're expressing your chosen identity. The person who rises at 5 a.m. isn't someone you're trying to become. It's someone you are. This identity shift is everything. Because once you see yourself as someone who keeps commitments, who does hard things, who honors their word regardless of how they feel, that identity starts demanding consistency from you. You don't have to force yourself to act with discipline. Discipline becomes the natural expression of who you are. The 5 a.m. war, at its core, is about reclaiming control. Control over your time, your energy, your focus, your life. In a world that constantly demands your attention, that pulls you in 1,000 different directions, that makes you react instead of act. Those early morning hours become your refuge, your space to remember who you are when you're not being everything to everyone else. And in that space, in those quiet hours before the world wakes up, you don't just plan your day, you design your life. You don't just think about what you have to do. You decide who you want to become. You don't just react to your circumstances. You create new ones. This is why the 5 a.m. war is worth fighting. Not because early risers are superior to night owls, not because there's magic in the specific hour, but because the daily practice of honoring a difficult commitment to yourself builds the kind of character that makes everything else possible. The kind of character that keeps promises even when keeping them is hard. The kind of character that chooses growth over comfort, action over excuses, discipline over default. So tomorrow morning, when that alarm screams at you through the darkness, remember this: you're not just deciding whether to get up early. You're deciding who you are. You're choosing between the person you've always been and the person you have the power to become. You're fighting for the right to live intentionally instead of accidentally. The war is real. The battle is daily. But the victory, when you claim it, doesn't just change your morning. It changes your life. Because the person who can win the 5 a.m. war can win any war. The person who can conquer themselves in the darkness can conquer anything in the light. The choice is yours. The alarm will sound. The question is, will you rise?